Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Radnor Township's first event focused on the 2020 census. I'm Roberta Winters, President of the League of Women Voters, and I'm very glad you are among the pioneers with us this evening. We'll be hearing first this evening from Regina Mauro of the U.S. Census Bureau, followed by John Nagle, longtime League of Women Voters member and former Radnor Commissioner. Let me begin tonight by thanking Anne-Marie Hessman, our communications point person, for helping to make this endeavor possible. She continues to work her magic behind the scenes as a host for this evening's Zoom event. I'd also like to take a minute to go through tonight's format. Each of you who are registered will be muted while the presentation is being delivered. At the bottom of the screen, you can click to find the chat box. Please feel free to raise questions as they occur to you by typing them in the box. At the close of the formal part of the program, we will address each of your questions. We will also unmute those who may at that time, raise their hands virtually using the icon at the bottom of the screen. You can then ask a question regarding the census or its impact. At the close of the question and answer session, I hope you'll stay with us for a moment while I wrap up and thank you before you sign off. It is now my pleasure to welcome Regina Mauro, Partnership Specialist in Delaware County for the U.S. Census Bureau. I have been fortunate to work with her as part of the Delaware County Complete Count Committee and to help build bridges with key constituent leaders in our township. She comes to her position with us this evening having a breadth of diverse experiences, including teachers. I'm sure her expertise will be evident as she now begins to share with us just why the 2020 census matters. Thank you, Ms. Mauro.
Thank you, Roberta. It is such a pleasure to talk to you all about the 2020 census and the importance to our community in Radnor. So what I'd like to do, I have a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to start sharing the screen. Let me look for it here, share screen. Okay, here we go. You see it okay? All right, so what I'd like to do is first give you a census overview, and I will do that by using one of the public service announcements, one of the PSAs that the census has. They have it up on their YouTube channel. I could talk about the background of the census, but I really wanted you to see the type of marketing product that they have put out and just how simple, what a great way they have of explaining the census. Then I'm going to share the biggest challenge, the reason why Roberta and I have been going around the community engaging trusted voices in helping us get the word out about how important it is. We're going to share how, why we're here, how you can help, and then we can take some questions. Here's a PSA. Oops, sorry.
What is the 2020 census? Every 10 years, the census records everyone living in this country. It's written in the Constitution and comes in a questionnaire that counts everyone who lives at your address on April 1st. The data can be used to inform funding for services like fire stations, schools, clinics, and representation that affect your community.
How will 2020 census data be used? Where there are more people, there are more needs for public services. That's why the census is used by the government to inform funding decisions each year. But that's not all. It's also used by nonprofits to inform services, by businesses to create jobs, and even by students for school projects. Understanding how the population changes helps us shape communities across the country for the better.
How does the 2020 census affect representation? There are 435 seats in the House of Representatives. These get distributed to the 50 states by population, and an accurate census response helps your state get the right amount of seats. States with smaller populations get at least one, while states with larger populations might get more.
How do I take the 2020 census? In March 2020, every address in the country will receive an invitation to complete a simple questionnaire, and there are 3 ways to respond. Number 1, do it online. Number 2, call by phone. Number 3, send it by mail. For those who don't respond, a census taker from your community will follow up and assist you.
Is my 2020 census data safe? After sending your census response, your personal information is kept safe. By law, it can't be shared with any other government agency, law enforcement, or landlord. No one. So take your 2020 census with peace of mind. Shape your future. Start here. Visit 2020census.gov.
Okay, so given all that, what is our biggest challenge? And our biggest challenge is people who do not respond. So who are they, where are they, and why don't they respond? Who? There have been numerous studies to try to figure out if there is any commonality between groups of people that don't respond. One particular report was published January last year, BAMS, Barriers, Attitudes, and Motivators Study, where they looked at exactly who is not responding, why don't they, and what would have motivated them to respond. What they found was, and I'm going to list a group of different demographics that normally tend to respond, they have lower response rates. Foreign-born residents, people in low-income households, the undocumented population, those who do not speak English well, the homeless, renters, and renters is big. I'll be going over renters a bit in more detail. Those without internet access, highly mobile groups, select rural areas, and the last 2 are actually related. Children under 5 tend to be undercounted in great numbers, and young heads of household between 18 to 34. The reason they are tied together is because most of the parents of children under 5 tend to be in the 18 to 34 year old range. Where are many of these non or low rate responders? Now this is a map of Delaware County. See? It's color coded. The darker the color, the lower the expected response rate. And you see how we have some areas here. There's Chester, there's Upper Darby area. We're somewhere around here. Non-response concerns really exist throughout the county to varying degrees. This is where we are. This is Radnor Township. One thing that I would like to point out, that even though you may find proximity or similar color in the different census tracts, it doesn't mean we have equal demographics, which in turn means the challenges may be different. The ways of the messages that we emphasize to each community may be different. Those are the 2 tracts that I had highlighted in the previous slide. On the left, we have a portion of Wayne. On the right, there's a portion of Bryn Mawr. We had about 19% here on the left that were not expected to respond on their own versus about 17%. So they're pretty equal. They both had equal shades on the map. However, and I underlined the ones, the demographics where they differ the most. On the left, the median age is about 21.5, and on the right is about 43 years old. Now remember that the younger the head of household, the lower the chances are that they are going to respond. Poverty level, you have 14% versus 5%. Children under 18 living in poverty, 21 versus not even 2%. Asian, foreign-born, and households that do not speak English well. You compare the 2, you see that we have a significantly higher Asian population in Bryn Mawr, as well as foreign-born. The reason I highlight Asian is because part of that study, I happen to be Hispanic, and for some reason I expected Hispanics to be the ones that would not respond to it as much as other groups. But in fact, it turns out that Asians are the ones that tend to respond the least. No computing device, it doesn't happen to be an issue, but it is something to keep in mind because, as I will share later again, this is the very first decennial where we are inviting people to respond online. So that's part of the message, and we need to be aware that when we talk to the community about that, we have to be conscious that there is still a segment of the population that does not even have internet access. For them, we have been partnering with all the local libraries, and they've done a great job. Right now, obviously, they cannot do it because of social distancing, but they, up until the stay-at-home order, they have done a phenomenal job at inviting people to come in to use their computer equipment. Why don't they respond? It's a combination of three things. They don't know how easy it is, how safe, or how important. Let's talk about how easy it is. It only has 9 questions. A lot of people think of the word survey and they imagine something way lengthier and more complicated, when in fact it's only 9 questions. And questions are very basic. If you were to do it online, which is what we strongly encourage, we're talking, it's pretty much, fill in the blanks. It asks, except for your name, it asks for your name, your date of birth, your race, sex, ethnicity, who lives in the house, most of the year, that's who has to be on the form. Same questions for those persons, and how are they related? So if I have, my husband lives with me, I would answer the same demographic questions for him. And if I happen to have a girlfriend that lives with us most of the year, I would say, so we just say that she's unrelated. It is available in several languages. So it's available in English, and there's 12 non-English questionnaires. If the person's questionnaire is not in a language that they primarily speak, there's another 52 language guides that they can utilize to put side by side and be able to fill out the one in English. It can be completed via internet, telephone, or mailed. Safe, and this is safety, and this is the one that has made a lot of has had a lot of publicity. People with concerns about the safety and confidentiality of the information. Title 13 requires the Census Bureau to keep all information confidential and protected. Other government agencies or landlords, remember I mentioned I would be talking a little more about renters. Other government agencies or landlords do not have the legal right to access it. So the Census Bureau cannot share with other agencies information, personal information from people. We share statistics, we share numbers. We don't share identities. Similarly, landlords, which is a huge concern for renters. Why is it a concern? Some renters feel that if they were to disclose information of who lives in the household to the Census Bureau, that the landlords would somehow gain access to that information. And if they gave the impression that more than X amount of people, number of people are living in the dwelling, they're concerned that the landlord may evict them. So for that reason, they tend to either not fill out the census or underreport the people that live in the house. Now, what about census employees? Any census employee, it could be a census taker, it could be myself, we all took an oath. But the very first day that we start working for the census, we take an oath. We know the implications of violating these provisions. We would be subject to up to $250,000 in fines and up to 5 years in prison. So regardless, needless to say, there is absolutely no incentive for anybody to be sharing personal information. To close any possible loopholes, by law, responses cannot be used against a person by any government, at any court, for any reason. Important. I have to say, this is the area, and I thought I knew it all, and I obviously did not. Before I started working for the census, I did not know how important it was. I was aware of how it determines our voice in Washington, the state's political representation in Washington. But I have to confess that it was never incentive enough to treat it with the urgency that I should have. So I was one of those that ended up getting the door knock because I did not respond on my own. This is what I found till today. Today I was talking to a pastor down in Chester, and I shared what I'm going to share with you right now. He equally thought that he knew all there was to the census and that it was important, but he did not realize that hundreds of billions of dollars in federal funds are allocated to the states, and it is based on the decennial count. So these are hundreds of billions of dollars that are being funneled down. Eventually, they reach our communities. So what ends up happening is when we have people that don't respond, we're given the impression that the population is smaller than it is. So in essence, we're saying, for instance, if we end up as a township, then as a county, if we contribute to an undercount to Pennsylvania, and it causes Pennsylvania to underreport by 10%, in essence, Pennsylvania is telling Washington, there's only 9 people here. So the government would turn and say, okay, here's money for 9 people, but you have 10 people to take care of. And that's the type of message, as simple as it gets, that we need to communicate to residents in our communities. You don't respond, you're going to be undercounted, we're going to be underfunded. Another reason why it's important is community planning for important public services, whether it's hospitals, schools, or roads. City planners rely on census information, on the counts from census information to see trends, to determine, you know what, based on what we found from the census, by the year 2024, it looks like we're going to have to expand this section of road because the population is growing disproportionate to what it has, the way it's been growing in other areas of the community. It may look somewhere else and say, you know what, we find that there are more people, more retirees coming to this area. We don't have our hospitals or our healthcare services are not adequately funded, staffed, resourced to be able to serve the needs of a more senior community. So what happens is when people don't respond, we don't find their age, we don't find who they are, we don't find they exist to begin with. So we're going to be undercounted, and that means we're going to be under-resourced for a decade. Because remember, this is the decennial. The count is what determines funding, not just for 2020, but for a decade. So it's 10 times more critical. Another reason why it's important is business planning for products and services. Businesses use census information. It's available online. I myself have owned a couple of small businesses in the past, and I would access census information to find out where my clients were. One of the services catered to, it was a college screening service for high school juniors and seniors. So I would look for segments of the population that tended to have a higher representation of that demographic. Non-responders means you're going to be undercounted, your area, and you're going to be underserviced. Along the lines of business planning to offer services, think of, for example, a retailer trying to determine where they should put the next store. So this could also have an economic impact on the community, an immediate impact in the way of jobs that could potentially come in because we're actually showing the growth of our population. I'm going to share quickly some highlights from the 2020 census, the barriers, attitudes, and motivators study. And I'm going to highlight general population, the 18 to 34-year-old heads of household, and households with children under 6. Barriers that we found. There are skill set concern, whether it's language or reading skills. General unawareness. If I were to share, and this has been my own personal experience in people that I have talked to throughout the county, people from the community and trusted voices, I would say complete unawareness of the importance of the census is one of the main reasons why people don't respond. Again, but they're not aware of how important it is. So some people tell me, I'm sorry, but I do treat it like junk mail. I should not, but I do. once I explain how important it is a completely different picture for them. No internet access leads to less access to information. We do have areas around the county, fortunately not so much in Radnor Township, but we do have areas that lack internet access. That by itself is going to prevent people from getting more information about the census. Non-Hispanic Asians and less educated householders were the least familiar with the census. Barriers on awareness. This is a very interesting graphic, and this does impact those in Radnor Township that are not responding. The question was, how familiar are you with the census? And notice that each bar each of the blue bars represents a different age group, starting with the younger ones, moving up to 65 plus. And in general, 18 to 34 heads of household were the least aware. So the older the resident, the more aware they are. Mistrust of the federal government. Most that were concerned, this was a surprise to me as well, were Native non-Hispanic whites, non-Hispanic small sample races, and non-Hispanic blacks. Least concerned or less concerned were foreign-born Hispanics and non-Hispanic Asians. So this right here told me that perhaps one of the main concerns for that demographic, because remember in Bryn Mawr, we did find that there was a significant Asian and foreign-born population. Perhaps it's just, it's not a matter of mistrust. So it's not a safety concern or confidentiality concern. Concerns about confidentiality, about 25% of everybody surveyed said that they were very concerned or extremely concerned about information, how the information could be used against them. Again, think about renters. Attitudes, there's a general apathy. On the question, how likely would you be to fill out the census form? Again, same breakdown. It starts with younger, moves on to older residents. 18 to 34-year-olds reported lower likelihood of responding to the census. So they're not aware, therefore, they're likely not to respond. Think of that Wayne track that we saw where the average age was 21 and a half. Motivators. Funding for public services was a top motivator across all groups. Yet less than half of the respondents knew that the census is used to determine community funding or community planning. The top three motivators, this is important because our politicians have done a wonderful job of getting the word out. They've been great partners to the census. But the message that I hear more and more is how important it is to have our voice heard in Washington. Now watch this, top three motivators. It helps determine funding for public services in my community, like schools and fire departments. 30% chose that. It contributes to a better future for my community, 17%. It provides information for my local government to plan for changes in my community. These are the things that we touched on of being important. Bottom three motivators. It shows that I am proud of my cultural heritage. It is used to enforce civil rights laws. It determines how many elected representatives my state has in Congress. It is important, but you can see how the top three are the ones that impact them in their mind, their daily lives more immediately. Motivators funding for public services. The question was, which one of the following is the most important reason to you personally that you feel that you should fill out the census form? Now notice this. Nearly 7 in 10 householders age 18 to 44 indicated community-oriented use of the census would be most important to them. Look how that line changed. So it went from, I'm not aware, therefore I'm not going to do it, but once you tell them what's on the line, look at that. So we need to get the word out. We need to let them know how important it is. How familiar are you with the US Census? This is just a table on households that have children under 6. Remember, children under 6 are one of the top groups that are the most undercounted. And you see here, households with children under 6 years old, you see how the numbers, you see how it changes. And it all has to do with the head of household really being between 18 to 34 for them to be completely unaware. So we're missing the young heads of household and we're missing their children. Why are we here? As engaged members of your community, the League of Women Voters, you are trusted by many, you're accessible, you understand the ease, safety, and importance of responding to the census, and you're critical to outreach. So how you can help? You can become a catalyst for change. You can contribute to bringing those numbers, that 16%, that 18% that we saw in those two areas. And by the way, if you remember in that map, there were two areas that were even darker. So the low responses were more in the 20-some percent. Become a catalyst for change. You can formulate your census awareness message, but tailor it to your audience. Remember, there's different reasons why people don't fill it out. Use census resources, encourage people to respond early, leverage your resources, stay informed, and share information. So I'll go over each one. Formulate your census awareness message to tailor to your audience. Understand the possible barriers and objections to participation. Are you dealing with apathy? Those young heads of household. Mistrust, renters, undocumented immigrants. Ability or language concerns, foreign-born residents, people that don't have the English skills. Make your message simple and visual. This is pure marketing, relevant and personal. We have a saying, I'm going to translate it. It's going to sound a little weird, but I think you'll get the message. We have a saying in Spanish, people have the attention span of a mosquito. And that's why it's very important that when you come up with your own flyer, with your own Facebook post, try to use visuals, try to not make it too wordy. There is so much to share with them, but we have very little time to catch their attention. This happens to be a half-page flyer. It's available online for anybody to download. A few minutes can shape your future. You see the mother, you see the baby. Important, safe, easy, just a few bullet points on that, and that's it. This will be more likely to catch their attention than if we were to put a whole document of why it's important for them to respond. Use census resources. We have this YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and you search U.S. Census Bureau, you will come across our channel where you can find PSAs and videos in multiple languages. Flyers, fact sheets, and posters. And I'm sure maybe Roberta can help us by putting these links on the League of Women Voters website, 2020census.gov/partners/outreach materials. There is a search box and it has a filter. You can filter it by language, audience, and purpose. And you can download any flyer, any poster you'd like. You can contact moi. This is my email address. Encourage people to respond early. Tell them to be vigilant of census correspondence coming in the mail. Encourage prompt response. Promote online self-response. And the main reason for that, there have been studies that have found that when you compare the quality of the information, the quality and the completeness of the information by the three different modes of responding, again, internet, telephone, and in paper form, mail paper form, they find that they get the most complete, better quality information by people that responded online. Inform census takers. This is also very interesting. The reverend that I was talking about earlier, I shared with him when I was about to hang up, I said, listen, especially these days when people are not going to be too thrilled to have people knocking at their door, later in the year, tell them that if they want to avoid that, regardless of social distancing, even in regular times, I myself, I'm not too keen on opening the door to people I don't know, but that's just me. The incentive for anybody that feels that way is just to respond. Go ahead and respond. Do it early. People that knock on the census takers coming to knock on your door, the only reason they're coming to knock on your door is because you did not respond. One thing that was very telling, just a little anecdote, when I started working for the census, one of the first things that I would ask people would be, what do you know about the census? And I kid you not, 9 out of 10 people would say, oh, yes, they're the people that come knocking at your door. Well, that tells me that if that's their impression, these are people that did not respond on their own, did not self-enumerate. So for anybody that wants to avoid that, the census taker is not going to just knock one time. This is very important. We need your information, and they will continue to come to your home. Just go ahead and complete it, and complete it in its entirety, not a few of the questions. Go ahead and complete it, the whole 9 questions. Leverage your resources whenever possible. If you have virtual space, whether such as, you can have Zoom meetings, you can have Skype meetings, you can have Facebook Lives, YouTube Lives, host a census briefing session, share what you have learned with your community. You have a communications platform, whether it's a personal or a business one. Incorporate census information into your newsletters and emails, your social media and websites, bulletin boards, wall and door displays. Put some flyers and some posters up in areas that have high traffic. Think of your local supermarkets, which are still having traffic. Think of the pharmacies. Think of restaurants that are doing delivery. Maybe they would agree to have some small flyer included in the bag. Non-census related events. If you happen to have, it could be a social gathering online, it could be a business meeting online, go ahead and mention it. Just spend a couple of minutes and just mention it. You'd be surprised the viral nature of that type of exchange. You have a network of additional trusted and influential voices. Encourage their participation in outreach. Anybody that's not listening to us right now, share the message with them. Stay informed, share information. 2020census.gov has enormous, just a treasure of information. You can get refreshments on why it's easy, safe, and important to respond. Keep on top of what's new for 2020 census. Important dates and what to expect, and this is what you can share. Between March 12th and the 20th is the household began receiving detailed information. It came in the form of an invitation on how to respond to the 2020 census. After that initial one, there are 4 subsequent reminders if you don't respond. You may respond, let's say, to the second one, and in between you did get the 3rd reminder, maybe that it got crossed in the mail. But the sooner you respond, the sooner the subsequent mailing stop, and then you can ensure, again, that census takers will not be coming around to get your information. After 5 mailings, census takers begin visiting homes that haven't responded. Be prepared to answer questions and address any concerns, everything that you've learned here, okay? So with that, I conclude. I thank you again to the League of Women Voters for the support of the 2020 census. Roberta has been an invaluable asset to this effort for us in Delaware County, and particularly in Radnor Township. So, hashtag Delco counts. Okay, with that, Roberta.
Thank you so much, Regina. You did a wonderful job in presenting a lot of information in a very short period of time. I would like now to turn it over to John Nagle, who will share with you what he foresees to be the impact of the census data on our reapportionment, redistricting, and drawing of the ward lines in Radnor Township. As you may be aware, the League of Women Voters has been working for decades to address gerrymandering and its impact on the value of our vote. As a citizen, League member, and former elected commissioner in Radnor Township involved with drawing the lines for our wards, John has a unique perspective. So it is now my honor to welcome him to this evening's program. John, it's your turn.
Thank you, Roberta. I found this extremely interesting. Also, back in the 90s census, my wife worked as an enumerator. She was making a career change and did that in there. It was, and like you said, she had to go back to some houses 6 and 8 times. So anyway, as far as the census and the role in redistricting, if you look at the law, ward boundaries are drawn based on population, not on voter registration. So the census becomes the key input for completing that task. The township is divided up into census tracts. I think Regina referenced them when she was talking about some of the areas in Radnor that were not as responsive. So those census tracts are small. I don't know how many. They're probably more than 100. They're drawn based on physical boundaries, such as streets or streams for that matter. So what we did is the last time we started out by, we tried a clean slate approach. We had hired a lady, and I must apologize, her name's escaping me now, but she had worked with the league in the past when we challenged Pennsylvania's gerrymandering, and said, just do it. And the first map she came back with resulted in at least 3, maybe 4 of the current commissioners no longer being in the districts that they represented. So we stepped back and said, okay, what's another approach? And we looked at the historical approach, which had always been to use the existing map and stretch the boundaries here and there until you could equalize things. A problem with that is one of the goals is you want people with common interest to be in the same, at least same precinct, if not same ward. So we figured that was the better way to go, and we established some guidelines, what we wanted to accomplish. So one of the things we wished to accomplish, of course, was the even distribution of population. Ultimately, we were successful with that. I think the wards are with plus or minus 5% from the smallest to the largest. We wanted to make sure to the extent practicable, we didn't break up areas of common interest, neighborhoods, if you will. We also looked at the colleges. As you all know, Radnor's got a large number of colleges with a lot of students. Students are counted during the census based on their college address. So we wanted to try to distribute the colleges and the college students over many of the wards rather than what had been in the past was only perhaps 2 wards. The reason for that is that college students, as a rule, do not vote except in presidential elections. And this leads to distorted wards when you don't have many, when you have a lot of people that don't vote. There are a couple things that became barriers, things we had to overcome, and I don't know whether we overcame them successfully. One was the fact that precincts, not wards, but precincts must have the people must have the same state representative. I'll give you an example. More than half of the wards in Radnor are split between 2 state representatives, either the 166th district, which is currently Greg Vitale, or Jennifer has the 165th, Jennifer O'Mara. So that's a barrier per se, or a rule that we had to follow. Second was we had to follow census tracts. So we couldn't split a census tract. Now, we were told that it was possible, but there was a very involved process you needed to do for that. I remember the census tracts generally were based on streets, streams, those types of things. I'll give you a couple examples of how that played out. In my old ward, the 5th ward, we have 2 precincts. The 5-1 is Greg Vitale's and 5-2 is O'Mara. So, but 5-1 is probably half the size of 5-2. There's several reasons for that. One has to do with the fact that large number of apartment complexes and sometimes the population doesn't accurately reflect or over reports those. So what we looked at first was expanding 5-1 towards Garrett Hill, because Garrett Hill was also represented by Greg Vitale, so we had that rule covered. The problem was the way the census tracts were laid out. We would have ultimately had to go to the center of Garrett Hill, splitting that neighborhood. We did not want to do that, so we didn't. What we did is we found some houses on the edge of between 7 and 5 that we could move into 5-1. Made it a little larger, but still it's significantly smaller than 5-2. This also meant that 5-2 had to add people so that the entire ward was in balance with the rest of the community. So 5-2, we ended up moving the line into the 4th ward. So for example, Ithan Woods, Hills of Bryn 4 were moved into 5-2. The voting place for 4 at that time for that precinct was Ithan Elementary School. So now what we do is the people from 4 actually leave their ward to go vote. And that's not really unusual, but it's confusing, especially to the folks in Ithan Woods that used to walk up to the school and vote. Another example is the 2nd ward. The way that worked out is we enlarged 2nd ward, and because we had to be concerned about Cabrini, Eastern, and Valley Forge, we ended up with a situation in which a small part of the added ward did not have the same representative. So therefore, we created a 3rd precinct, because 2-1 and 2-2 both are 166, Greg Vitale. So these new folks that we pulled in had Jen O'Mara. So we now have 3 precincts. The interesting part of that is because that precinct includes the colleges, we've had as little as 20 votes in that precinct on some elections. And the poll still has to be staffed, and you have to have your contact people there and your judge of elections. So that's that's not favorable, and we hope to be able to correct that. The 1st, 3rd, and 6th wards, what happened with those is each time we tried to adjust one of them, the way it pushed the others. Anyway, it became a real balancing act. But ultimately, we've made most people happy. We've now had to sort out voting places, and some of those are changing. Part of the problem there, of course, was when Sulpizio Gym was closed down for a while, and when the library was under renovation. But we'll work through all of those. So as you can see, it's not an easy process. It doesn't necessarily take a computer, although that helps. In fact, folks that are good at this, it's one of those where they almost work better without a computer. So I hope that's helped you understand just how important the census is, that it counts people accurately, And I hope to be able to get some of the census tracts modified to give us more fine control, if you will. So that kind of wraps it up. Are there any questions? I'm sure we have a question and answer period, don't we, Roberta?
Yes, John, we certainly do. And I want to thank you, as well as Regina, for sharing what you know about the census and how important it is. I was going to ask Regina to begin with, if you don't mind. Do you have, as Mr. Nagle said, any information about how census tracts might be modified? Or is that beyond your reach?
Way beyond my reach. Not just beyond, way beyond my reach. No, I'm sorry, I don't. That's something I could generally ask and let you know, but no, I don't.
Because I think that has been a real burden at times when they're trying to draw the ward lines. But in addition to just the ward lines, the numbers that the data show us determines how many federal representatives we will have in Washington, and also the way our state representatives and senator lines are drawn as well. Am I correct, John?
Yes, and the other thing it affects is the state senate, not just state reps. Currently, as you're aware, only Haverford and Radnor are in the 17th senatorial district. So the fact that we are Delaware County creates quite an imbalance for that senator. He receives an awful lot more influence from Montgomery County. And I think that's problematic when we need assistance. Luckily, he does a very good job representing us.
No, we are lucky. Thank you, John. I also wanted to ask Regina, one of the questions I asked her before we even started this process was, what about the college students now that they're sent back home? And April 1st was supposed to be the date at which they were counted. And we have so many students at Villanova, Cabrini, Eastern, Valley Forge Military Academy. If we lost all of those numbers, the funding to our community would be greatly diminished.
Yes, I proactively reached out to all the colleges in the county just to make sure, number one, and I did as soon as we got the stay-at-home order. I just wanted to make sure they were aware that where the student is enumerated has not changed. As you know, most students are back home, and back home may not be, especially places like Villanova, where they have a significant segment of the student population that is not local. So I wanted to make sure that they knew that the enumeration would remain the same. You are counted where you live most of the year. So even though come April 1st, you may have been already back home, you still need to be enumerated where you live most of the year, and that's in the school. Now, when it comes to students, there's two different types of enumeration. If the student lives off campus, if the student does not live in a facility that's owned or managed by the university, if they live in their own apartment, they're going to be getting their own form. It is important, and I related this to people at the colleges, it is important that they remind them that they can go online and enumerate themselves from home using their apartment address. Very important. For those that live in the school, we have given, the schools always had 5 choices on how they would enumerate the students. One of them is a rapid response, which is basically they can send the bulk of information directly to the census. The one option of the 5 that they would not have now is where we drop off forms. They drop them off to the students, they collect them again. That's obviously not an option now because they're not there. But no, they have been contacted, and I just made sure that at our operations people, I'm not in operations, but I just wanted to make sure that if there were also any changes in staff at the college, if we had a contact of somebody that used to deal with the Census Bureau to coordinate the enumeration, I wanted to make sure the same person was still able to do it. Not everybody was able to continue the work at home. Not everybody was able to keep their job either. So I wanted to confirm who the main person was, and they responded. I passed it on to operations. So I trust that we're not going to have an issue there.
Thank you, Regina. Anna Marie, were there any questions that were laid out on the chat board for us to seek a response to?
We have one question about the timeline for the effects of the redistricting, both the national for Regina and the more local level for John. You know, what would be the time period when all this information would start to be used? And I guess, yeah, so that seems to be the question.
Well, if you think about it, this has to be in the president's, on the president's desk by the end of December. So the census is going to happen, the counting is going to happen. And we definitely have time. So that is not something that anybody should be concerned. The census is going to happen. If there are going to be modifications such as what I just mentioned, how for colleges, well, now they don't have the paper option. Now they have to choose one of the 4 other ones. So there's modifications like that, but rest assured that it's going to happen. And the deadline, like I said, the president has to have it on his desk by the end of December.
And the process for redistricting is serial. So the states would do theirs first. I would expect that would be 21. But then once theirs is all settled, then the local communities would have theirs. And again, we may look at the results and determine that the wards are still fairly imbalanced, because that's the driver, is when the wards get out of balance. And then we would go through the process. I know the league has requested that we change the way we do redistricting. I fully support that, and I know Roberta and others are talking to the current commissioners about that. Right now, with everything else going on, can't imagine they'd even listen to you, Roberta.
Now, we did a study about how it was done in the past, and we had worked, as you mentioned, with Amanda Holt, who was involved with the statewide redistricting efforts, to try to see if we could have a process that was less partisan, because I think when there's ever whatever party is in power is less likely to share that power through a fair redistricting process, however that's done. So we would like to have a citizen group perhaps that would be hopefully less partisan, help draw those lines. One of the things I thought Regina mentioned that I thought was very interesting is about how sometimes people don't want to tell the truth on the census, particularly if they are renters. And I know in Radnor we have a very strict student housing ordinance where you're not supposed to have more than 2 unrelated people living in the same house that is being rented. And I'm sure that that's, you know, something that those students need to know, that that information does not go to the township, so they will not be punished if in fact their girlfriend may be staying with them that semester. So it's important that you be perfectly honest in filling out that form, because I think what I learned at one of the events, that we lose $2,000 per person who does not respond, and that's over a 10-year period. So if you have 2 children in the house and you forgot to mention that they were there, that's a lot of money the township and the county is losing for our public services like our libraries and schools and so forth. Anne Marie, was there something else that came across?
I don't see another question at this time. And I'm watching. I want to give everybody a chance. Going. Oh, I have a question in the chat. We have a question: how will COVID-19 impact the door outreach? Sorry, not donor. Door.
The census has taken every measure that is mandated and recommended in when it comes to any type of interaction with the public. So rest assured that all of that is being taken into consideration.
Thank you. So then people can be assured when they are approached at the door that that worker will be using every social distancing precaution and perhaps even a face mask and gloves if that's required. I would also like to mention the fact that, as you stressed before, the best way to avoid that knock on the door and any potential risk that may happen is to actually fill out the census forms right now. Just go online, make that telephone call, or fill out the form, and then you are home free.
That's correct. That's correct.
So let's maybe repeat where you go once again to do that.
Regina, would you remind us, please?
Yes, 2020census.gov. 2020census.gov.
So just go online, and that's 2020census.gov. And for those of you who perhaps have a short-term memory loss, you may go to the League of Women Voters website and just Google League of Women Voters website or Google 2020 Census, and all that information will pop right up for you. Am I correct, Regina?
Correct, Roberta.
Well, I would like to thank Regina for all her insights tonight, and for John for sharing the behind the scenes work at how those numbers play out into how our wards are divided, and Anna Marie for working her magic behind the scenes as our hostess, and all of you who were willing to experiment with us on our first virtual League of Women Voters events on a very special topic. And while a lot of us care about the $2,000 that's coming into our county for every responder who will happen to put that information down correctly, all of us who are voters and involved with the political processes in Radnor and beyond really know that that census information is vital in understanding how our vote counts. So thank you again this evening, and we wish you all the best as you try to stay healthy and keep well. Thank you.
Good night.